Welcome to a new day of truth and awakening. And thank you all for tuning in to the first edition of the original histories of Africa and migrations of the ancient world. I am your divine host, Pharaoh Mitzrayim, the ancient historian, historical researcher, geographer, and the voice of truth. And today I will be teaching on the subject Ethiopian ancestors of African Americans and West Africans. But before we get started, be sure to look below, subscribe to this channel, and like and share this video. Thank you. When it comes to the terms Ethiopia and Ethiopians, modern day authorities, due to their racism and bias, invented many theories in order to downplay and discredit the greatness of these ancient African people known as Ethiopians. And they came up with theories such as Ethiopian means burnt face, or the land of Ethiopia only applied to the narrow region south of Egypt along the Nile River. Well, none of this is true, and none of this has anything to do with the true Ethiopia of ancient times. And there was no need for the ancients to have stated that Ethiopian means burnt face, because the Ethiopians were already called black. And the word used for black is melos or melancros, meaning black skin. And we find nowhere in the writings of the ancients of them stating that Ethiopian means burnt face. But it is simply a racist and derogatory term that was created by the modern authorities in order to make it seem as if the blackness of the Ethiopians is not original, but was caused by the sun, or as they say, scorched by the sun, which is a blatant lie. And concerning the land and territory of the Ethiopians, well, we will allow the ancients to answer that question. And I will show the source and let the source have the first say. And then afterwards, I'm going to give my honest interpretation on the source. So without further ado, let's show the source and reveal the truth once and for all. No more waiting for the truth. First things first, let us deal with the earliest source to ever mention the word Ethiopian for the first time in history. And that source is none other than the ancient Greek poet Homer, who lived during the year 850 B.C.E. And here's what he had to say about the Ethiopians, in quotes. Howbeit Poseidon had gone among the far-off Ethiopians, the Ethiopians who dwell sundered in twain, the farthermost of man, some where the sun set and some where he rises. Homer, the Odyssey, Book 1, year 850 BCE. As we just read, Homer, in his own words, stated that there were two nations of Ethiopians, one dwelling towards the sunrise in the east, and the other dwelling towards the sunset in the west. But the problem is, Homer never says east of what or west of what. And because of this, many scholars have tried to place the Ethiopians in any location that fits their agenda. But this is wrong. And the only way to answer this question truthfully is to stay within the known Greek world during the time of Homer, which is the Mediterranean. And there are also those scholars who came to the conclusion that the eastern Ethiopians dwelt near India in Asia, and the western Ethiopians dwelt south of Egypt in East Africa. But there's a problem with this claim, and problem is Homer makes no mention of India, Persia, or Syria, and had no knowledge of any nation east of Asia. So it is therefore wrong to place the Ethiopians near India due to the fact that Homer makes no mention of it. And any idea that the Ethiopians dwell anywhere east of Asia can be dismissed. But later Greek historians and geographers who came after Homer placed the Ethiopians south of Egypt and south of Libya. And yes, Homer does in fact mentions both Egypt and Libya in his books, the Iliad and Odyssey. And Egypt and Libya are both situated on the Mediterranean Sea within the Greek world. So it is only right to place the Ethiopians south of Egypt and south of Libya due to the fact that Homer makes mention of both. The eastern Ethiopians being south of Egypt and the western Ethiopians being south of Libya. And that is the truth we will focus on today. Our next source will be from the ancient Greek historian known as Siculus, who lived during the 1st century B.C.E., some 2,000 years ago. And here's what he had to say about the Ethiopians, in quotes. But there are also a great many other tribes of Ethiopians, some of them dwelling in the land lying on both banks of the Nile and on the islands in the river, others inhabiting the neighboring country of Arabia, and still others residing in the interior of Libya. The majority of them, and especially those who dwell along the river, are black in color and have flat noses and woolly hair. Siculus, Book 3, Chapter 8, 1st century BCE. As we just read, Siculus, in his own words, stated that there were many other tribes of Ethiopians, dwelling on both banks of the Nile to the south of Egypt, and further south where the Nile River splits into the Abara River, the Blue Nile, and the White Nile, which Diodorus mistakenly calls islands, and towards Arabia, which was all the land from the east bank of the Nile to the Red Sea. And these Ethiopians were the ancestors of the modern-day people of Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Somalia. And lastly, he mentions the Ethiopians in the southern interior of Libya, which was all the vast land from the west bank of the Nile to the Atlantic Ocean. And these Ethiopians were the ancestors of the modern-day people of southern Libya, Chad, Niger, Nigeria, Mali, Mauritania, Senegal, Guinea, Ghana, Benin, and of course, the African Americans. And since this video is dealing with West Africa, we will focus on the Ethiopians in the southern interior of Libya only. And our next source will be the Periplus of Hanno, which is an ancient Greek periplus that was written in the 6th century BCE, some 2,500 years ago. And in this periplus, it speaks of Hanno, a king of Carthage, who sailed along the west coast of Africa with 60 ships, 30,000 Carthaginians, and established colonies and settlements along the west coast of Africa. In this periplus also gives a name for the inhabitants dwelling south of this coast, and it says in quotes, "For the voyage of Hanno, commander of the Carthaginians, round the parts of Libya beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Sailing thence, we came to another river that was large and broad and full of crocodiles and river horses. Whence, returning back, we came again to Kern. Thence we sailed towards the south 12 days, coasting the shore, the whole of which is inhabited by Ethiopians." As just stated in the Periplus of Hanno, the coast south of the Pillars of Hercules in Morocco was known as Libya, and the inhabitants along this coast were known as Ethiopians, proving that Libya was not just the region directly west of Egypt, but it stretched all the way west to Morocco, and from Morocco it continued southwards along the west coast of Africa. And the dwelling place of these Ethiopians was indeed the west coast of Africa, and the true people of West Africa were known as Ethiopians, not Negroes as we are taught today. And this truth is now known. Let us continue and go to our next source, which is a Roman historian named Seleucus, who lived in the 1st century BCE, some 2,000 years ago, and he wrote a book titled War with Jugurtha, which is based on the Numidian king named Jugurtha and the ancient people known as Numidians, which means nomads. And Numidia is the ancient name for the modern-day country of Algeria in North Africa. And here in Seleucus, War war with Jugurtha, written in 100 BCE, says in quotes, "The rest of the region as far as Mauritania is held by the Numidians, while the people nearest Spain are the Moors. South of Numidia, we are told, are the Gatilians, some of whom live in huts, while others lead a less civilized nomadic life. Still farther to the south are the Ethiopians." Wow, as we just witnessed, a Roman historian living 2,000 years ago, writing on the empire of Numidia, takes time out to give a geographical description of the people south and far south of Numidia. And once again, the people to the south are called Ethiopians by this historian. So far, 3 ancient historians living over 2,000 years ago all state that the people of West Africa were indeed Ethiopians. But let us continue. We will now go to our last and final source, which is an ancient Greek geographer named Strabo, who lived in the 1st century BCE, and he wrote 17 books titled The Geography. And here in Strabo Geography, Book 17, Chapter 3, he says in quote, "This then is my account of Libya as a whole, but I must describe it in detail, beginning with its western or most famous parts. Here dwell a people whom the Greeks call Marusians, and the Romans and the natives Mari, a large and prosperous Libyan tribe who live on the side of the strait opposite Iberia. Here also is the strait which is at the Pillars of Hercules. Above Marusia, on the outside sea, lies the country of the Western Ethiopians." As we continue on, Strabo Geography, Book 2, Chapter 5, 15, says in quotes, "Now as you sail to the regions of the south, you come to Libya. Of this country, the westernmost coast extends only slightly beyond Gades. Then this coast, forming a narrow promontory, recedes towards the southeast and gradually broadens out to the point where it reaches the land of the Western Ethiopians. They are the most remote people south of the territory of Carthage, and they reach the parallel that runs through the cinnamon-producing country." All I can say is amazing. Before we was ever called West African, Negro, Sudan, or Sudanese, thousands of years ago, our ancestors were known as Ethiopians. And Strabo, the most celebrated geographer of the ancient world, wrote down and stated that the people far south of Carthage in Morocco were indeed Ethiopians. And the truth is in the map here. And based on the map, yes, we are in West Africa now, not in Egypt or East Africa. And according to the map, Carthage, Numidia, and Morocco is in the western parts of Africa. Carthage, Numidia, and Morocco in the northern part of West Africa, and the land of the Ethiopians in the southern part of West Africa, the land of our ancestors. And the title Ethiopian does not just apply to the people of modern-day Ethiopia, Sudan, and the Horn of Africa, but it also applies to the people of Central Africa and West Africa. And based on the evidence, we will no longer be denied our right to be called Ethiopians, just like our ancestors. It is now official. As we continue, we will now make the connection between the East and West Ethiopians and focus briefly on the question, who else does Strabo calls Ethiopians? And the answer is here in Strabo Geography, Book 17, Chapter 1, 49, says in quotes, "A little above Elephantine is the Little Cataract. A little above the cataract lies Philae, a common settlement of Ethiopians and Egyptians, which is built like Elephantine and is equal to it in size, and it has Egyptian temples." As just stated by Strabo, the closest kinsmen to those Western Ethiopians were indeed those eastern Ethiopians south of Egypt and north of Sudan, proving that the western Ethiopians were direct descendants of the more ancient eastern Ethiopians south of Egypt. And Strabo refers only to these two nations as Ethiopians, showing that the ancestors of the African Americans and West Africans were the closest kinsmen to the ancient Egyptians and Ethiopians south of Egypt. And this is the God-honest truth we must reclaim and take back. Now we see when the source and the evidence is brought forth, the truth comes out. And when the evidence is present, the truth cannot be denied. And truth is, African Americans and West Africans are direct descendants of ancient Ethiopians. And the liars and racists don't want us to know this because they know being Ethiopian means we have the greatest and richest ancestral lineage that goes all the way back to Nile Valley civilization in the pharaonic dynasties of Egypt and Kush. And with that said, the truth has been unveiled. It just got real, and the voices of the past has spoken. And on that, I conclude.
So there you have it. What did we learn today? We learned that Ethiopia was not just the narrow region south of Egypt, but the true Ethiopia was all the vast land of Africa, stretching from the west bank of the Nile River all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, which the ancients called Libya. And West Africa is also included. And we also learned that the true East and West Ethiopia of Homer was located within the African continent. And it had nothing to do with the East of Asia, because East of Asia was unknown to Homer. And we also learned that the Ethiopians in West Africa were the same race and come from the same origin as those Ethiopians directly south of Egypt. I need not to say more. The sources have been shown. The ancients have spoken. The lies have been exposed and refuted, and the truth has been revealed. With that said, signing out, this is your brother Pharaoh Mitzrayim, saying until next time, Egypt stays in Africa. Peace, Hotep, Mayat, and may you all have a wonderful day.